Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Small Talk. It's the sixth episode, and today's episode is all about do opposites attract? So I'll start off by saying that I think it does for us. I know loads of people, including my friends, have said that we're completely different people in terms of personalities, but we seem to get along fine.
Fine? Is that all? Is that how we get along?
We seem to get along very well.
Better than fine.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think it depends on the people, isn't it, and how you make it work. But what do you think?
Well, to start off with, I do think that we are very different. I think everyone's fair in saying that to us. I mean, we've had quite a few people say it to us. I think a lot of people, especially who know you as a person and then who know me as a person, and then when they see us combined together, they're like, okay, wasn't quite expecting that, but cool. I think actually I knew we were very different when we first met. And I think actually it's not just personality wise. A lot of our hobbies and interests are so different from one another. So our first meeting actually, you were talking a lot about like your interest in traveling, your big love for sports, and the activities you've done, and you've tried a lot of different sports as opposed to me, who hasn't really been very sporty. We try and get out of PE. I wasn't very sports heavy as you were. um you're a gym fanatic. That's very clear. You're not a gym fanatic. Is that what you're saying? You're definitely a gym fanatic. You're very much someone who likes exploring, and that's like the first couple of things I got to know about you when we first met. And I do remember thinking, oh, okay, those are quite normal things. But as opposed to my hobbies that I probably shared with you, very different spectrums, right?
But I think that's why that's one of the things I kind of was looking for in the when I went to meet you, or if I was to go meet somebody else, because I think I had seen so many I had seen so many CVs of people that were had maybe not similar interests, but had studied in similar field as I did, maybe in maths or science. I didn't really want to marry someone who was in the same field as I was. Maybe, I don't know, it was just my preference that I wanted someone.
Was that more of a mindset thing because they were already in the same industry as you were?
No, not necessarily, but I think I felt like, yeah, to me that wasn't really, I just wasn't going down that route. And
yeah, but to be fair, you were avoiding people based on their job rather than their interest, correct?
True, but I think probably for me, I don't know, for some reason I assumed that would have meant that probably we would have similar personalities.
No, to be fair, some people do say sometimes that it's not always a good idea to be in a relationship with someone who's in the same industry as you. But part of me also thinks that why not? Surely they understand you and your work ethic, and how important and stuff is around that aspect. But I guess that makes it so that you're too similar as people as well, because
True, but I think also for me, I didn't want, for example, that's one of the reasons I didn't really push you to become or to go into teaching as much, because I didn't want, not necessarily didn't want you to become a teacher, but I didn't know if you would have the same experiences I've had, and so being in the same field might be more stressful for you than it is for me.
yeah.
And so I thought, you going into journalism because that's what you wanted to do was fine. It was actually good, and I wanted something, and I wanted you to be a bit different than how I was, because I think from outside from people that know me, you probably say I'm a bit reserved,
Correct.
and
Definitely correct.
you probably wouldn't. You're probably not as reserved as I am,
Well, the
and
thing is,
that's what
actually,
I kind of like, the fact that you're not.
hang on a minute. You're reserved, but you're reserved to an extent. When people actually get to know you, you're actually more crazy than I am, I think. I actually think you're a lot crazier than I am. Or maybe more free, actually. Maybe freeing is the word. Because I remember actually, I just thought you were so like mature, so put together. And, even my family members who had met you and all of this stuff were like, yeah, he's just like, you very much gave number one a teacher vibe. And also, you just knew how to handle yourself very well.
I think I just want.
Alhamdulillah, and that's a good thing. I think it's very good that you know how to handle yourself, and you know how to handle um being around like elders, and like in a situation where it's an event, you know how to be you know there to support, there to help where needed, but also be able to like have good conversations with like the elder men and things like that. So I think a lot of people, having seen all of that, was just like, to me, yeah, your husband seems so
A lot more
chill.
mature.
Yeah, so chill. Like, he seemed really like humble and all of this stuff, and which is correct. They're right to say that. And then, I'm living with you, and I see how you interact with like certain people, especially with like your nieces and nephews, even around the house actually. You're obviously a very different person from that mature, calm exterior type guy. And it's not that you don't have that, but you're very, very much more freeing with it. When we're at home, you're quite loud, which is incidentally like my brothers when they first met you, and when we first were together and living together, they even asked you, how do you put up with our loud sister? And I was like, I take
I'm the loud
offense.
one.
Yeah, I was like, firstly, I take offense to that, because obviously in my household I had three brothers, and actually I was always the loud one because they were just quiet or they were in their room, so my voice was the one that you'd hear in the house. And I think they will tell you now, when I'm not around, it's actually still really quiet because they've each got their own room, their own, doing their own thing. But I mean, me being around made it lively for my parents. Like they knew there was someone in the house. So initially, when I moved out, mum and dad were starting to recognize that, oh my gosh, like our daughter's really not here, because we're not hearing her voice, and we're not like, you know in our house there was just not
No,
enough
but even though you say
of
you
that.
you obviously louder, but you seem to be like the kind of calming figure in the house, even though you probably were the loudest
Loudest as
one,
well, yeah. And I think that
especially for your parents.
yeah, and that's what it was as well. So like when my brother said that to you, um I was like to them, you'd be surprised actually, I'm not the loud one in the house. And I think that also came more down to actually.
That's also because you moved into a house where you didn't know most of the people, so it took you some time to get used
No,
to it.
no, but having said that, actually, even so, that, yeah, that was initially how I was. But even now, after being 3 years together and having lived together for that long and having our in-laws around, I'm still not the loud one in the house. You're still the loudest. And it's not even that I'm trying.
I think that's just being the youngest in the household. That's why.
Yeah, and I think you also do it intentionally,
Mhm.
because you like just, keeping the house lively as well. Otherwise it would be really quiet if we were quiet. But I think more than that, actually, like, I think my brothers found it really weird that I wasn't loud, and I was like, it's not that I'm not loud. It's just I feel like when I'm with you guys, it's a different situation, because I feel like I'm just constantly shouting at my brothers
No, but that's probably because
or like telling them
that's
off.
because you have to try and speak over, probably not just your brothers, probably me as well. Try and get your voice heard
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, but it's not even that. I think they're just so quiet that my voice just sounds extremely loud to them in a situation where I'm actually just talking to them. And I think over the last like years, the few years, they've actually noticed that I'm actually not as loud as they thought I was. I think in our home and constantly living together, they thought, yeah, she's really loud, but actually, I'm not a loud person in general. I can be loud, don't get me wrong. Of course, there are moments where I do, raise my voice and I'm a bit loud and boisterous, I guess. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they asked you that question, because in everyone else's eyes, especially on my side of the family, they were like, yeah, Tamim is so chill, so
Yeah, but you have
quiet,
to know.
so reserved, so
Yeah,
just
but
cool and calm.
you have to know when to use those personalities in different situations. Like for example, you can't be
Yeah,
that
you're a pro.
you can't be a kid when you're around, like for example,
Oh,
your
you're
parents,
definitely a kid when you're
and
not around my
and
parents.
you can't be an adult when you're around, let's say, your nephew or nieces. You're, let's say, 10, 11, or 12.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. So actually,
Yeah,
for
but
me,
you're like that as well to an extent.
yeah,
No,
I think to be honest, in
I
our
think everyone
time,
has that. I think everyone has that. It's just maybe.
no, some people are naturally like, jokey people who have like who don't actually know how to be like um like calm and collected and handle themselves in like front of elders. Um, whereas with
It
you,
helps. It helps if you know how to speak Bengali.
well, yeah, of course it does, but like as in with you, even like, but actually, you have majority of the conversations you've been having with like other people in my family or like at events when you meet people, you do actually speak a lot of English as well, and like you just get along with people really well. You just know how to really handle yourself um in front of certain people, and like you pick and choose who you are when you're around them. But not everyone can do that, and I think that's one thing that I had to recognize that about you actually, because I thought I knew you, and but then I got to see you whilst we were living together and who you are as a person living in a living situation. And the 6 months where we were quote unquote dating was really me just getting to know your like respectful.
By the way, we weren't dating like
Yeah,
normal
no, we were
dating. We were
we were
married.
we were married but not living together, so we were technically using that 6 month period to like really get to know each other, essentially date each other without it being haram, obviously, because obviously I was allowed to go and meet him without a chaperone and all of that stuff. And actually, I think that was one thing we did that actually massively helped our relationship. I think not having the added pressure of like rushing to get married in terms of doing like the big
But also
event.
not rushing into kind of, because imagine, you moved in, let's say in August or something. It might have been a bit too much because you still hadn't, you don't know, obviously you never know somebody until you actually live with them. You can date as much as you want. At the end of the day, you don't know how that person is until you live with them, because there's on the times that you meet outside, that person is dressing nice for you. They're smelling nice for you.
Yeah, they're
They're
showing they're putting their best foot forward,
yeah.
basically.
So you're not seeing, let's say, every morning they wake up grumpy or something like that,
Yeah.
or every morning they wake up, yeah. So you're not seeing the day to day, life of that person. So you're only seeing the best side. So so even you can make a judgment, obviously, and you'd hope that all the judgments that you make, or like all the things that you take away, that are true. But sometimes you can have certain things that you might not be happy about, and but that's or something you compromise on after you live that person. But yeah, so even then, but I think both of us handle that, and you especially, and I think you've settled, especially with my family, with my dad. You're a favorite. But
Yeah, no, honestly.
So you've settled really well with my family, and even my extended family, and my nephew, nieces, and my uncles. It's not like that you haven't made an impression, or you haven't you found it difficult to settle in. Maybe you can say if you found it difficult or not. But it seemed like from what I could see, you seem to kind of settled in just fine, and they think you're doing really well as well. So, and they're really happy with how you are and how things are going, and especially the fact that you're a new writer for Times, and I think that's quite different. I think that's what it is. For me, it was anyway. It's the fact that you were doing something so different. Going
Yeah.
back to what the topic was, so it's just like, no,
The opposites
yeah,
really attract.
because you were so different, and I thought, that was really interesting, and that was one of the first things I kind of, saw from your CV, marriage CV, was that you want to be a journalist, and I thought that was really interesting. That was quite amazing, and so that's what I thought, and that was probably one of the main or one of the first kind of attractions towards actually why I wanted to meet you, was that fact that you were so different than kind of anybody else I'd seen or their CVs of or even met.
Going back to quickly what you said about your family, alhamdulillah, like your family has been so great, and including your extended family, that they have actually welcomed me with open arms. So getting to know them, getting to feel like a part of that family didn't feel like a hard task to do, and I'm very grateful for that, because there'd be more instances where obviously if the family wasn't welcoming, or like even just like immediately, like your sister, I was really um
You got along with my sister really well straight
yeah,
away.
I was kind of obsessed with your sister more than I was with you. When we first met, I really liked his sister, and mind you, your sister's older than me by quite a few years.
But 9 years,
Yeah,
19
like there's
years.
a big gap between me and your sister, age gap wise. But alhamdulillah, that age gap had never felt like it was an age gap. She really treated me like a sister from the get go. And I think that really helped me feel settled and comfortable as well. Considering I don't have any sisters, actually, I've always wanted a sister. So this is like me trying to get a sister. And because of that, actually, at that first meeting where I met her, I just remember telling my mom, like, I really like his sister. And, like, that just the way she, like, again, I think it's your family, the way you guys present yourself, hold yourself together, the way you speak, you guys just really are so, like, clued on and, like, so um, respectful and everything. And I really, really liked that as well. Like, I never got a bad vibe from her. She never made me feel like she was there to quote unquote judge me, even though she was, but it didn't feel like that. And obviously, since then,
You're talking about the first meeting, by the way, right?
yeah, this is the first meeting. Like, I never felt like she had come there to kind of give her judgment on me, because obviously, at the end of the day, she was there to help you figure out if this was someone
If
that
you're the
you'd
right
want to
person.
spend your life with. So I never felt like that from her, and she honestly did treat me with so much respect. And then obviously over time, once we did start, talking about marriage and things like that, we did spend some time together. Um, and yeah, I think that was important as well. And seeing your like interaction with her, and with your nieces and nephews, that's where I think you know you as a person was so different to the person I met during that 6 months, because living with you and then seeing you interact with your family like properly was actually really nice to see. And it was actually really, it made me feel at ease, and it felt easier to kind of mesh well with the family because of that.
Well, this is obviously, with marriages, I know it's between two people, but you have to kind of, remember that it's not, yes, it's two people getting married, but it's two families actually joining as well. And so it's not, it could, two people can be perfectly fine in marriage, but if the families also don't get along, or if you don't get along with the families, then it makes it really difficult to be in that relationship. And like I said, for you said, alhamdulillah, you found it quite easy to fit in. And likewise, your family was very welcoming as well. I get along with your brothers really well. Your cousin brothers, your uncle, alhamdulillah, everyone in terms of your extended family as well have been really nice and been really kind of welcoming. So and that's all you can
Well,
really
yeah,
that's all you can ask for really, because obviously,
exactly.
and then it makes then it makes it easier for you to make that effort, because you know that or you want to make that effort for everybody, because they've been so nice to you. Why would you not? If you're treated nicely somewhere, you would want to go and visit those people. You would want to go spend time with them and be nice to them as well. So it's yeah. So I think that from both sides, we've both been very lucky in terms of in-laws, and how good we've had it really.
I was gonna actually mention, obviously with our way of doing things in terms of marriages, we've got the whole looking at where we're from back home. Do those situations, opposites attract?
No,
So in that, what I'm saying is basically in our CVs we mention we are, where we're from back home in Bangladesh. So like where our family were raised and brought up, and a lot of people actually do very much care about that, and it can impact the relationship that they have with the family or the spouse, um because obviously there's like, I guess, negative connotations around certain villages and like things like that. So do you think with us there was anything like that?
I don't think so, because if I think if there was, then your parents probably wouldn't have said yes, and my parents probably wouldn't have said yes either. So I think that in that sense it was fine. But I think it's important, because I know for a lot of people nowadays it doesn't really make a difference, where people are from back home, um, or how they were raised and all these things. I mean, I know certainly it was quite important for our families, um, but I think it's more, and I think that's the parents looking at
The dynamic
not
between
that not just the dynamics, is also looking at if the mentality of the parents
is compatible.
matches as well,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that's maybe what background check is really, on the parents, and let's say on the family, is to check if the
Are
two,
there enough similarities?
not just imagines, are the two families compatible, because
Yeah.
yes, the two people might be compatible, but if the two families are not compatible, then it's going to be very difficult. For example, if let's say my parents and your parents didn't they didn't get along very well, it'd be very difficult for you, and it'd be very difficult for me.
Yeah.
So it's that background check is more to not necessarily just check on the person. It's also check if the families will mesh, and if the families will, get along well. And if that checks out, then obviously then the marriage goes ahead, or you say yes, and then there's more stages to it. But I think it for me, and I know a lot of people now will say they don't really care about it, where you're
Yeah,
from.
but how much of that stuff is important though? Like the whole, like, let's say if we're taking the opposites attract argument with actually looking at like village status.
Not status, but I think.
But like village, I mean, how would you explain that then? What
No,
would
but
that be called?
But I know, but that would be mentality, isn't it? That would come under mentality. For example, not that there's anything wrong with it, but sometimes, and we've said this before, sometimes you can have amazing people coming out from really bad families, or you can have really bad people coming out from
Great
amazing.
families. Yeah.
So it's but it's
It's
but if you
reassuring.
to actually, I don't know what the statistics are, but probably most of the time, if the families are good, the parents are good as well, then likelihood of the child being as a decent person.
Going back to us being opposites, because that is what this really is about. Yeah, so in our first meeting, I did think there was a lot of differences with us, and it wasn't bad differences, because there's only so much you can really find out about someone, especially in that first meeting. But obviously, the 6 months we were dating, we found out a lot more about each other, and I think more and more it became I don't know, actually, did it become clear to you that we were different from one another during that 6 months period? Because I don't know if I really focused on it so much.
I think no, neither did I. But I think our interests and our hobbies and all these things, they are different, right? I think they are different.
Mhm.
But the main principles, like how we, for example, want a family, how we wish to live, how we, all the things that we think about, like kids, families, our religion, everything. I think those things we have in common.
Yeah, as in
So I think we
our fundamental values are similar,
yes,
and we actually probably aligned with those things first when we first met, because like things like, living with the in-laws was very important, and I understood that, you understood that. um Things like, how
for
much.
for example, last episode when we spoke about work, we both agreed that you wanted to work straight to, and I was obviously happy for you to work. I wouldn't say no in that case.
Yeah.
But we both knew that after, if we were to have children, that you may possibly have to do part-time work for a bit, or that might become that won't be your priority, right? And raising our children will be your priority, and you understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but having said that, afterwards, when the kids are, let's say, older, if you wanted to go back into work and pursue a career, that's perfectly fine. But I think we both agree on that point. See, imagine we hadn't agreed on that point, right? Then
it would become a conflict.
And then it would be very difficult for you to have said yes, or for me to have said yes, right? Because then you go, okay, well, can I take a risk, and can I say yes, and then maybe she'll change her mind, or for you to go, can I take a risk, and for him to change his mind about this situation. So I think these big concepts, or big like I said, scenarios, I think we are very similar, not very, I don't want to say exactly same, but we are similar in how we think about them. And we can speak about our differences, and we can come to an agreement, or at least compromise if we have to, and we're both okay with, right?
Correct. I remember when my brother, the thing is, I didn't realize how different we were to one another until my brother mentioned it one day when we were sat together, and he was just looking at us like, how are you two, he literally said, how are you two married? You're so different to one another. And I remember actually when he said that, we just laughed at it, right? It was funny. And then I remember, like, 10 minutes later, I just looked at him, and I was like, how are we together? Because the reality is, we, like, looking back over our interests and hobbies, like, something as small as, like, you liking to go to gym, you're very much into sports, one thing that actually has happened in our relationship is, because you have such different interests from me, we've been able to help each other figure out if we like those interests as well. So during lockdown and like COVID and things like that, we would go walking together, and I'm not very much a walker, and by extension of walking, we did hikes. I never thought I would be a hiker. Like you got me to a point where I bought hiking boots. Like that that was like a shock to my system, because I remember the first time I went hiking with you, and I genuinely loved it. Like, I really enjoyed myself, but I don't know why I kind of always thought I would never be interested in hiking. It just never felt like something I would do. But I guess that's where it comes down to who you're around that would make you perhaps enjoy hobbies like this, because I don't know if I would have.
Also, I think you were quite, with, let's say, for example, with the hiking, or with anything else, I think we're both quite happy to try out something new. If the other, if one of us, if you or me, like to do something, let's say, for example, going for hiking or whatnot, right? Because we went quite a few times with my sister and her families, and my parents as well. So you were willing to try that. If you weren't willing to try it, then it would be like, okay, Now, I mean, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. I would have went, okay, that's fine. You can just stay. I'll just go
Yeah,
and do it.
actually, what would you have done? Because I would have. I can't imagine because that was we went a couple of like quite a few times.
Yeah.
Would wouldn't that have made you feel like you had to say no a couple times as well? Because you might have felt like,
For
oh,
me, no, I wouldn't have.
so you wouldn't have stayed
No,
home with me.
no, I wouldn't have because I think um it's fine if you, I think my family would have understood that if you do want to do it, that's
Hmm.
fine. But there's no reason why I can't, join them. But at the same time, it'd be the same thing for you. For you, so if there's anything that you really like to do, and but I think I'm generally quite good at, if I like if trying out new things,
Hmm.
and I think I'm okay with that. Um, but as long as you're supporting, even if it's the differences, as long as you're supporting one another in, you know, pursuing those things, it's okay. I think it's okay to add. It, I don't know, but I think if we were exactly the same person with everything, it'd be a bit boring. I think.
Yeah, I remember actually talking to my friend about this because she did ask the question that, you know, is it weird to have not enough similarities with your spouse? Because she personally was trying to figure out if there was just too many differences between her and her potential spouse. And I said to her, well, I don't know why you think you need to be so similar with everything, because in actuality, it's good that there's differences between you and him, because now you are going to learn, different things as well and try different things out, and vice versa. And then you've also still got like fundamental similarities or like some fundamental interests as well. Like, I think we massively bonded over food. That was the one thing that we probably had that was like our safety net in terms of like conversation wise when
Always
we
go
were.
back to food.
Yeah, I don't know, somehow we managed to always go back to food. And that wasn't a bad thing though. Like I remember actually at one point, even my brother was like, you guys always seem to just be talking about food. And this was in the first 6 months of our
Wouldn't
nikah.
talk about food for 6 months.
No, obviously not. We spoke about other things, but like, let's say we'd have a 1 hour conversation. At some point or another, food would come up. I think it definitely did. But there was nothing wrong with that. I actually liked that we had that one topic that, even if all else failed and we had nothing more to talk about, food was the one thing that we could definitely talk about, where we actually were just like able to share our love for it, talk about places we want to try out together, things like that. And I think that was important as well. So my friend was like, I don't know if you like, she wanted someone maybe a bit more similar to her. And I was like, but do you not think that's going to be a bit boring at some point where you've got too many similarities? Like, even for us, I think we found out and we figured out quite early on after we were living together that we don't have the same taste in films and TV shows. Now, it's
Yeah.
not that we can't watch films and TVs together, but oh my gosh, it is tricky to find something that will hold both our interests together at the same time. And I thought that was such a tricky thing because it was like the one thing that we could do at home that was quite easy to bond over. However, now that we've been together and married for 3 years, it's a difference that we have with one another that I'm happy that we do have, because
I've got a bunch of stuff I watch.
yeah, your spectrum of watching stuff is so broad and so different to what I have. But it's not a bad thing. But I think what I've noticed actually over the last, like, even just the last year alone, like, is the fact that we're actually comfortable, like, just watching our own thing. We don't have to constantly be around each other or watching a movie together or watching
Yeah,
a
but I
TV show
think
together.
no. Sorry. Yeah, having said that, we do watch certain
Yeah,
things,
of course there
but
is
I
going to
think
be stuff
but
we
but
watch.
no, but I think I think it is also important to have that, like you said, where we're not we're not in each other's way to to sit down to maybe watch something. Sometimes, like, you just want to do your own thing, and it's okay.
Yeah, agreed. And
But
I
not,
think
but not being. Having said that, not like continuous, do it all, for a long period of time, because I don't think we do. I don't think we do that. But
no,
I think to take a little bit of time out to do what you want to do, or to watch what you want to watch, is fine. I think it's quite healthy, and I think maybe it's quite good. It's good. It's a good thing.
I mean, our genres are so different to one another though as well. That's the thing. Like if we were to watch something, examples of like shows we'd watch together are like, okay, well, one that we love watching together is Line of Duty. Like
Yeah.
that was one that we massively. I think actually you introduced it to me in our first year of marriage, and I genuinely had no idea what it was, and I hadn't really heard about it actually, which is weird because it was on like season 3 or something
Yeah,
like that.
season 3, I think. Season
Yeah,
4.
it was just turning to
No,
finish.
actually.
I think season 3 finished, and then season 4 was gonna start. That's why you were rewatching it.
Yeah.
Something like that was happening where you were rewatching it, and then you were like, "Oh yeah, you should watch this," and we massively bonded over it. And again, it's a sort of show that I would have normally watched, but it just wasn't on my radar. I wouldn't have known about it had he not mentioned it to me. Um, and that was like another thing that I really liked is the fact that there was gonna be stuff that you like that are is different to what they like, and you can actually bond over that. And I didn't realize like how invested. I mean, we became quite invested in
Yeah.
that show. Like that was our thing. We're waiting for the next season to come out. Like we have rewatched it together a couple times now, haven't we? Especially like certain episodes. Like we love that show and we can't wait. We once we know the date for the next show, like next season to come out, I think we'll start it from the beginning again and just watch it through because it's just such a good show. But like equally, I was watching The Mentalist.
Yeah.
That was something
That's a good show.
that
That's a really good show, actually.
that was something you liked. We also have what other shows have we bonded over? There's quite a few like that we watched together.
Big Bang's always on, but
Big Bang is just like just your normal comedy that we watch together. Modern Family we've watched together.
a bit about.
Yeah, not as much.
What's the House?
House was one that House was interestingly House was one that I wasn't expecting us to both bond over.
Similar to the one that you watched with the doctors. What's the other one called?
Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Oh, Grey's Anatomy. I mean, to be fair, it's such a long series that we actually never started watching. I mean, even now,
No, I wouldn't watch it.
it's too long.
too
I
long.
think it's such a long series that you could give it time to watch. Like
Sherlock Holmes was another one that we watched.
oh, Sherlock Holmes, loves Sherlock Holmes. That was something you introduced me to. Wouldn't have really given it much thought, honestly. And I think that goes to show how nice it is to have those differences, Like, I'm very much like, even though the Sherlock Holmes one was very much a crime based drama, right? And that's something that I'm into. I was more looking at stuff like Criminal Minds and The Mentalist sort of crime based dramas. So it was very much on a different level, but in a similar genre. And that really was like nice that we were able to like bond over things like that. Yeah, so it's actually weird, but when it comes to you watching on YouTube, oh my gosh, your YouTube history is just so mixed. You go from watching stuff on
It's season by season.
I mean, you literally go from watching like NBA stuff to Graham Norton to Wild and Out to it just varies so much. So we actually never really watch YouTube together. Although we recently picked up the habit of watching Reddit videos of like situations and scenarios, and they're actually really fascinating. And we will literally sit and discuss the topic itself because we find it quite interesting to hear other people's life situation and kind of put our perspective on it, in the sense that what would we do in that situation? Do we agree with it, or how would we handle it ourselves? But yeah, that's something we've recently been kind of doing a lot of.
Obviously, these differences are, I think, small things.
Minor things. They're not even.
And
The thing is, it doesn't change our relationship.
if
It doesn't make our relationship
yeah,
negative or anything
for
like that.
example, if when you mentioned, you were into sports and I was into sports and I was into, gym and all that stuff. For me, I could I you know I, for me I couldn't care less if you like sports or gym. It just didn't make a difference to me,
Mm.
right?
Having said that, again, another thing, I did go to the gym during lockdown
No, but
with you.
you tried. You tried.
Yeah, as in because of you,
Yeah.
because you were going, I was like, do you know what? Maybe it's time for me to actually, I always said I wanted to go gym, but it's wanting to and actually going is two different things.
But I did tell you that it literally, if you didn't want to or you couldn't care less, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, and so actually, when I did start going with you, I did enjoy myself, but I think I just knew that it wasn't the right sports or like activity that I should pursue. But I gave it a try, and it was nice that we had that time together when I did go to the gym with you. But again, it made no big or small impact on or affected our relationship majorly, in the sense that, let's say for argument's sake, I had, like, when I went to gym with you and you were like frustrated with like my crappy gym etiquettes or whatever. I don't know, you would have, like, there are certain instances where that can happen where like you might have felt like I was invading your space, because for you gym is actually really important and you do it quite often. So I'm actually surprised you didn't feel like, why is she kind of coming along with me? But no, but that's great, because you never really made me feel like that either. But had you felt like that, or had you felt a certain way, it might have affected our relationship. So
Yeah, but that's why I said these differences, and I think I think the differences that we have, generally speaking, are differences that or I don't know. I'm sure you probably feel the same way, but for me, it doesn't really make much of a difference if you didn't like the stuff that if you didn't like the stuff that I liked, or if I didn't like the stuff that you liked. I don't think they're big. I don't think they're big differences enough to make us go, I don't know if I can compromise on this or whatnot. Like I said to you earlier, I think the big issues, or the big topics, we think very similar, similar in the way we'd approach, how to solve these problems or how to deal with these problems. And I think that's more important for me, and probably for you.
Yeah, for sure. Otherwise,
and so then the question is, are we really that different?
we're very different people, personality and hobby wise. However, our fundamental um
values
are the same, and I think we massively bonded over that initially when we first got together, and I think we kind of ran with that actually. But having said that, can you think of any other couple in our lives that are so different to one another, that have a successful marriage? I keep thinking of my parents.
Yeah,
I feel like they're
probably my parents as well.
Yeah, I feel like they're very different people. And
definitely my parents as well.
Again, they're arranged marriage, but alhamdulillah, they make their relationship work.
But all marriage, you got some compromises. You got some, and that's just given. That you're gonna have to go, okay. I might not like this, but I'm okay. Or like we said in the first episode, if you have certain things that you're looking for in a spouse, and then they don't tick, let's say, the fifth or the sixth thing that you're looking for, can you really compromise on it? And certain things you just have to go, okay, that's fine. It is what it is, or it doesn't really make a difference to you now that you're living with that person and whatnot. So yeah, I think like I said, marriage is a compromise, and it's fine as long as the main thing is, I think, as long as you feel calm, as long as you feel like you've got tranquility in the marriage, then I think you're okay. I think you'll be fine. I think it's just, obviously, if you don't have those things, then if you're not at peace, if you're not calm, if you don't have tranquility in a marriage, then obviously it might be an issue that you have those differences, and they make it worse. But I think, alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
I don't think we're our little difference that we do have really cause it not issue. I know it doesn't cause any issues, but I don't think even kind of cause any issues in how we are and how kind of calm or how happy or how tranquil we are in our marriage. So alhamdulillah, so I don't think.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like everyone that knows us, that has seen us interact, have said to me at one point or another that we are so different, but we somehow make it work. And I'm like, I don't know if it's somehow we make it work. I think we just value. I think we just. I think we just prioritize the the valued stuff far more in our thought process of actually being a couple rather than the interests and the hobbies and all of that stuff. Even when my brother said it to us, remember I did ask afterwards. It genuinely did make us think because in that moment, I don't I don't think either of us thought we were that different because our values were so similar. And people might say that the movies you watch or the TV shows you watch are such minor things in a relationship. Yes, they are, but actually at the same time, you're spending a lot of your time, watching a show and committing hours to it, that it can be hard to kind of balance that with a relationship and, making making time for one another.
Yeah, but that's why you have to say. I think you have to set boundaries, isn't it? Like I think it's fine. For example, in a day for you to take some time out for yourself, whether that's you going out, to the gym, or whether that's you spending some time at home by yourself, watching a show, whatnot. But as long as it doesn't overlap or as long as it doesn't, become the only thing that you do during the day to kind of take a mind off things. As long as it doesn't, go into your family time or whatnot, I think you're okay. I think that's fine. I think sometimes you do need it, especially if you had a really bad day at work or a really hard day at work. Sometimes you do need that an hour when you come home just to take a mind of things, and that might be like I said, that might be for you, or for me that might be gym, and for somebody else it might be watching a TV show or just going to sleep for an hour or going out to walk for an hour or whatever it is. But it just depends on the person, isn't it? But I think that's okay. I think taking that time out there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. But as long as it's not kind of eating into your time, family time and whatnot, then you're okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously for us, we are the opposite. We have many differences.
I think mainly people think we are opposites because of our professions and and what we've studied and what we kind of, like you said, what we like, our interests and stuff like that. I think that's why mainly most people think we're completely opposites.
But then they see us interact. Like my brother saw us interact and he was just like, I don't even know how you guys married. And I was like, I found it really funny because in that moment I never really clocked that we were so different until he actually mentioned a couple of the points that we're talking about now. Like our interests and hobbies are just so vastly on a different level. Um, but actually, I think we even spoke to him more about the fact that I think that's why it works so well for us. Actually, the fact that we are so different, and I don't know. For me, I personally think it is nice to have those differences and like test the waters out for certain things that you might have never done before, trying different foods, all of those things actually helps because with your relationship and especially with the time that you're spending together, it's nice to do those things and figure it out as a couple.
It also gives you an opportunity to do something different as well with your wife or your husband that you might have never tried before, and that you probably wouldn't have tried had it not been
for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's literally what it was with us. But yeah, I feel like whenever people see our relationship and our interactions with one another, it's to them it's like it's almost like you guys are so different, but alhamdulillah, you guys work so well together. Somehow, somehow we make it look, I think, quote unquote, easy. But it is all down to how much
It's not
time and
easy. You're very hard work.
yeah. Sometimes it is down to, how much you're willing to put into the relationship, how much you're willing to adjust, like going hiking wasn't something I was actually a huge fan of, but I was like, am I really gonna not go and try it out? Because
You have to get out of your comfort zone.
yeah, a little bit, especially with stuff that makes you guys so different to one another.
Even with this is something I never thought I'd do.
Oh yeah, yeah. I persuaded you. I don't know how I somehow persuaded you to do this podcast.
Like, this is not in my personality at all.
Yeah, I mean, even your friend said, "Whoa, how come you're doing this? Like, it doesn't seem like something that could have been easily persuaded."
But it's become a lot more enjoyable now. Obviously, the first one I was nervous, and then after a couple, it just becomes a bit. It's normal and it's enjoyable. But I would have never done if I was by myself. Would I have ever done this? Never.
What did your friend say to you after he found it? What was it? What was his thing? He said something like, "Oh wow, like how has she managed to convince you to do this?"
Yeah.
How did I manage to convince you to do this?
I don't know.
What made
I
you
got roped in.
What made you to decide to do this podcast with me? Because actually,
No, I thought it'd be fun for both of us to do it. For both of us to do this together. Yeah, and I thought, I thought, why not? I mean, yeah, I just thought it'd be quite interesting just to see how. And I generally thought one of the reasons why I did it is because generally, it's something I would never do.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to try it.
Yeah.
And see how it kind of felt.
And how's it going? Are you enjoying yourself?
It's amazing.
Okay. The thing is, right? Yeah, that is actually so true because I'm actually surprised you did want to do this with me.
I'm surprised I did.
It took me a while to convince you. Not so heavily.
No, it's not convinced me. I think it's more that, like you said, I was worried. And it's not the type of thing I would do, but I thought, why not? I'm doing it with you. If I was doing it by myself or with somebody else, I probably would have done it. But I thought, I'm doing it with you. Why not?
So
It'd be good fun. It'd be good fun. And hopefully it would be fun to do, and it's become quite fun to do now. It wasn't the first one, but it was. Yeah,
that was because it was awkward for you, and then like even hearing your own voice afterwards.
Yeah, I hate listening to my own voice.
Yeah, but yeah, actually, having said that, again, that was something that you did out of your comfort zone for me, and I appreciate you doing this because obviously, I didn't want to start a podcast by myself because it's not that I'm not comfortable talking. Trust me, I can talk. But I just felt like it would be nice to also have like the male perspective, and especially considering a lot of the stuff we talk about is about our own communities. Again, like his village is different to my village. The way I've been brought up might be slightly different to how he's been brought up, and I felt like those things were important to try and add to the podcast. So yeah, I'm glad you said yes to doing this with me. I think we should finish this off. We've talked a lot, and clearly, from our perspective, opposites do attract, and somehow we did manage to unintentionally, I think.
Opposites do, as long as you have the fundamental beliefs or values kind of lined up.
Perhaps. I don't know. Maybe that's a big question mark.
Okay, for example, let's say the work situation that we spoke about last episode. If we didn't see eye to eye in how you wanted to approach work and all that, then it would have been difficult for you to say yes, and it'd be difficult for me to say yes as well.
Yeah.
Right? Or even, you said a couple of episodes before, we said living in-laws. If that was an issue, then that wouldn't have worked either.
Mm.
So I think well, maybe you feel differently, but I definitely feel like if you got the the big issues, the big topics, or the big tick mark or questions that answered, and you both see those things eye to eye, then it makes it a lot more easier um, to compromise on things that might be like for example interests and stuff like that, because they won't matter as much in my opinion. So
Yeah,
you can be different in personality and everything else, but I feel like as long as you match up with those values,
yeah,
then you're okay. I think you'll be fine.
yeah. And I'm sure if you feel like your partner or your spouse is a little bit boring, or you guys don't have a lot of interest together, suggest the things that make you different to try out together as a couple, because there's always ways to make those things, those activities fun as well. Um, I didn't know how to swim. I'm currently learning how to swim with my husband. Um, and that's been fun for us to do together.
Mm.
Again, it's not that I didn't want to know how to swim. I used to know how to swim. I forgot. We went on holiday
You never know how
together.
to swim.
No, I definitely did. But like we went on holiday together, and that was basically us, you know. Now we're doing something, we're doing an activity together that is actually something I'm really interested in, but I've just never had the chance to fully pursue it. So I'm doing that with my husband now. So there's always a way to make the differences you have as a couple and as people individually be fun to do together. Um,
You just have to be willing to try those things.
yeah, I think if you say no from the get go without really giving it a second thought, it does make trying to bond or find something to bond over hard, you know. So you gotta really keep an open mind, I guess, definitely for those things to try and make your relationship stronger. Because yes, you want to be your own person, but then you also want to figure out how you can be a couple together, and that is also really important. So we're gonna finish this off here. I mean, clearly we can talk about this a lot because for us there are many differences, but alhamdulillah there are amazing similarities as well that we have that has made our relationship alhamdulillah
Work
successful.
successful.
And yeah, and we're keeping up with it, we're keeping up with trying to get to know each other still,
Mm.
like this is only 3 years in, and there's so much still that we haven't tried together as a couple that are our big differences and things like that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully we shall see you in the next one.